Thanks, Lewis. My name's Martin, and yeah, as I said, I'm an alcoholic. I kind of class myself as an alcoholic because it was really alcohol that brought me to my knees. But truth be known, I would take just about anything. When I first came to CA, I didn't really take it that seriously. I think I was a bit. Someone described me as a bit cocky the first time, a bit non-committal the second time, and totally wrecked the third time. I was a bit of a mess. So much so that I couldn't come to a meeting on my own, even though I already kind of knew the fellowship a little bit. I was that battered, that badly hospitalised and mental institutions this time round that I couldn't walk out my door. I'd been beaten up, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but basically I was just a mess. So my sponsor kindly used to send people around to my house and take me to meetings. And then within a few months I felt the love of this fellowship again, and started to be a little bit more aware that this was the place that I needed to be if I was going to do the work this time round. Even when I'd gotten through the steps, I think when I'd gotten through the steps, my recovery process really actually started taking off then. Took me a long time to really admit I was powerless over alcohol, because my mind would just think, well, you're not actually powerless over alcohol because you haven't had any for a few days, regardless of the fact that I've been taking cannabis, dropping speed, taking cocaine, hospitalised for all of that. One of my worst episodes actually wasn't with alcohol at all. It was sniffing lighter fuel. I remember I didn't have enough money to get drunk or to knock myself out, so I went to the off licence and bought some butane. I actually, even though I'd been kicked out of my house at this stage, my house, my parents' house, I'd been kicked out of every single girlfriend's house, and I was now living on the street after burning my bridges with anyone that I might be able to chat up, or any bloke that I might be able to sort of like getting to take sympathy on me, some Christian from the church, or my family. I'd really burnt all my bridges, but I couldn't handle street life because I wasn't really attuned to it. As I said earlier, I'd gotten beaten up, I'd been robbed and things like that, and I couldn't help the night shelter or living on the streets outside of the night shelter. So basically I snapped back into my parents' shed at the bottom of the garden, and I think my mother probably knew I was there. Well, she definitely did. I don't know if she had told my father or not. He was a bit harder. And one day, as I say, I didn't have enough money to get drunk, so I went down, got some lighter fuel, came back into the shed and sniffed it. There was a phone call from me at the house. I didn't have a mobile phone, and as I say, my mum came out of the house down to the shed, and I saw her coming. I must have been like semi with it, and I thought, well, I can't let her see this. So I took a final toot before she got to the shed, and I must have tipped my head back or something and ended up drinking it. And so yeah, I got a frozen lung, and I had a heart attack. The reason I'm telling this story is because this is where I kind of get some of my real experience of a higher power. My mum's a worrier, she's a panicker, and she saw me drop down dead in front of her. Saw my lips turn blue, so went and phoned for an ambulance and explained what happened. They said, well, an ambulance is already on its way, but by the time he gets there, he's going to be brain dead. You're going to have to give him mouth to mouth. And they were given instructions to her on the phone how to how to perform the procedure, and she did that for 7 minutes, I think it was. She told me. I haven't asked her too many questions about it because she always breaks down whenever I do, so I don't know all of the details. But I know that the ambulance was working on me for 45 minutes, and then I was taken to hospital, so I think I was dead for 45 minutes. And then they put me into an induced coma for a couple of days to let my brain rest. And when it was time to take me out of it, it was explained to my parents that they could like switch it all off, or they could bring me out, but I could be a vegetable. My parents said they'd look after me, and they brought me out of it, and it's kind of all good for a little while. And this is really where the powerlessness kicks in. Within a few months, I was drinking again, and within a few months, I didn't have enough money for drink, so I was sniffing lighter gas again, even though it just killed me. And my mum caught me doing it this time. I think, to my knowledge, that's the only time I've seen my mum cry. There might be others, there probably are others, but I used to drink to black out, so I can't remember half the trouble I caused. Remember, I went and lived with my brother for a bit, and he kicked me out of the house, and I was back in the night shelter, and I came back to my parents' house again. As I say, I just could not handle the street life. I wasn't a very hardened criminal, or I just wasn't really very tough. I grew up in quite a middle working class family, and anyway, I came back to my parents' house again, and I think they let me in, I'm not really sure, but all I can remember is waking up in Southampton Hospital, and apparently I passed out in the kitchen, cracked my head on the back of the tilings on the kitchen floor, and they saw this dark pool of blood coming out, very dark, and they knew that this was serious. So I was airlifted to Southampton Hospital, where I stayed in intensive care for a few weeks, and then I was taken to Poole Hospital for a couple of months, where I had to be rehabilitated. I don't mean from alcohol, I mean learn how to walk again. And I actually escaped from the hospital with some money, got to, I wanted a day out actually. I didn't just want drink, I wanted to escape. So with the money, I spent some of the money on the bus ticket, and I remember the furthest I could get on the bus ticket was to the Hampshire Centre and back. So I bought that ticket, and then with the rest of the money I bought special brew. Got back to hospital, and they instantly knew I'd been drinking, so they censured me under the Mental Health Act, and there was kind of like no escape from that, because I was in like one of those electric wards where I couldn't get out. But I did get out, because I noticed that when visitors left, I noticed there was a split second before the buzzer clicked, and you could just push the door open in that split second. So I managed to escape again. I got some more drink, and I think in the end they just nothing more they could do with me. And from there, I didn't actually spend a night on the street. I was found collapsed, because I went straight back to the off licence, and I was taken to Bournemouth. So I went from Southampton to Poole to Bournemouth, all within about 3 months, and really that's how bad my alcoholic mind worked. I just used to always obsess about it. I think what's kept me sober this time isn't just working through the steps, it's actually listening to my sponsor and actually doing what he said. They say try and choose your sponsor very carefully, but I didn't actually choose mine. Well, I did, but I do believe that my higher power or God chose him for me. Because rolling back a few years, in 2009 when I first came to this fellowship, I bumped into this chap. I was actually at a church do, because I thought I could get sober through God alone, and one of my friends had said to me, "Can you come and help me with the cooking for this?" He was a chef for the church, and I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." And as we were cooking, as he was cooking, he was doing the icing on the cake, and he had this blowtorch, and and he was dripping his icing on the cake. There's a point to this story. And I said, oh, can I have a go at that? And he sort of looked at me and thought, well, yeah, well, go on then, you can try it. So I instantly took the butane can out and just sniffed it, and he just kicked me straight out of the kitchen and told me to go and sleep it off in this room. Well, in the room next to that room, there was a CA meeting, and they needed some more chairs. So my sponsor came in to the spare room, kicked me off the chair, and got me to carry a couple of chairs into the meeting. And that was my first experience of a CA meeting. And he sort of like took me to a few meetings, and I did a little bit of step work with him, but then promptly relapsed. And then I got taken to a detox centre again, and when I came out and I was able to leave the dry house to do some shopping, I bumped into him in Asda, and I said, oh hi, can you sponsor me again? So he said, well, all right, we'll talk about it. And basically every time I've relapsed, and it's been 4 or 5 now, and I've come out of a detox centre or a hospital detox or something, I've bumped into this same guy. And I'd seen the Truman Show a few years back, and I really thought there were cameras on me, because every single time I would bump into him. Anyway, this particular time in 2011, I bumped into him, and I was doing this sort of like timed drinking thing. I was in a dry house, but I knew that if I had the can at the right time of day, when they tested me in the morning, it'd be out of my system. Because I've done that a few times before, until the obsession gets a hold of me too much, and the cravings, and I can't time it enough, and I end up being over on the test. But before that had happened this time, within a week or so, I'd met my sponsor again, and he told me, look, he said, you're going to get kicked out again, and I don't know if I can do this again. Look at the state of you. I don't know if you can do this again. And the reason I was in such a state is I've been beaten up at the night shelter quite badly. I was sober enough to see this guy collapsed on the ground and call an ambulance because I couldn't wake him up. He woke up, realised his wallet was missing, refused to go to hospital with the ambulance, and beat me up, and the ambulance ended up taking me to hospital. So I'm in a semi-sober state, sober enough to know what's going on, and yet I can't defend myself against someone who 5 minutes ago was unconscious and needed an ambulance to wake him up. And that's both why I couldn't come to meetings and couldn't step out of the house, but it's also probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I realised just how broken my body was. And it was a process, a long, hard, clawing process of going through these steps. I didn't miss anything out of my step 4 this time. Tell a lie, I did miss 2 things out. But when my sponsor phoned me up to say, is that everything, have you got any secrets? And I told him what they were. And he said, well, we'll come around, we'll do another step 5. And this time I did it as thoroughly as I possibly could. And wherever I didn't do it 100% thoroughly, I was always honest about that, and then went and did it 100% thoroughly. And this time when I went through the amends process, it's the first time or second time round with him, I refused to do any amends. When I got to step 9, wrote out the list, and that was it. And that didn't turn out too well, actually, because promptly relapsed again. So yeah, a lot of the amends, I won't lie, I was quite scared of doing, and some of them were so delicate I had to write a letter with the guidance of my sponsor, and didn't want to harm anyone else, which is kind of like the main thing. It's to clear your side of the street, but it's also about them and making amends to them. And through working a step 10 as best I can, I did work it as best I can. I did write everything down. I did that for about a year, and got to the stage where I stopped doing that, actually. And then I used to only write down when I got a really bad resentment that I just couldn't get rid of, or a fear that I used to write the really important stuff, but I kind of got out of the habit of doing my step 10 every day. So then I would end up causing more harms to people. And so I'm continuously working a step 9 whenever I do cause harm. I promptly admit it. And now I'm also trying to work this step 10 as best I can, so as I don't have to do too many more step 9s. And since I pulled my finger out, that's how it's been, and it's really good. And life has actually started getting a lot better for me. And when I got to step 12, as I say, I still hadn't lost this fear, and I still bring this with me now. And it's a sheet I used to carry around with me, because when I first came to do my first share, I was so scared I refused to do it. And my sponsor said, this is key, this is important, carrying this message to other people. So I said, well, I'll read it out then. He said, you can't, that's not. And anyway, I negotiated and twisted, and in the end he wrote down a few bullet points, and he said, if you get stuck, you can look at these bullet points, but he said, just talk about how the steps have helped you and how your life's changed afterwards. And that's really what I want to talk about now. I've had this brain injury, and I've died, and all of this stuff that's gone wrong. Diabetic now, and now I'm actually going through tests at the hospital, because it appears that my pancreas is working again, which I've been told is virtually unheard of. It's happened occasionally, but not a lot. So now I've had to greatly reduce my insulin, sometimes not take any at all, and they're not quite sure what's going on there. I've got to wait back for the results, but I'm certainly, I might not be the sharpest tool in the box, but I'm not a brain dead cabbage that the doctors warned my parents that I might turn out to be. And I've actually gone back to college again this year as well, so I'm keeping up with that all right at the moment, although it's early days. But basically my life has just turned 180 degrees. Instead of going backwards and just going to the hospitals and eventually the graveyard, I'm now going forward, and maybe slowly, maybe not as quick as some others have done it, but from where I've come from, I'll bite anyone's hand off. If they offered this to me where I am now, I would have just snapped it up. The other key thing to me maintaining my sobriety is it's not just listening to my sponsor and working the steps as best as I can when I have to. It's really having a commitment and getting involved in this fellowship, because this fellowship has really embraced me. My sponsor hasn't always been around, he's not on the phone 24 hours a day, and I've made some real friends in this room and in the meetings around this area. And do you know what, I wouldn't have had a social life, I wouldn't have had friendships if it hadn't been for you guys. And a way to stick in the middle of this fellowship is to always have a commitment, and that's what I've always done. I've always been a part of CA, whether it's been picking up cigarettes or writing letters to district because of what the people have been saying at area, and when I haven't understood it, I've been asking my sponsor, what do I write? And he said, well, use your own words but include this, and that's what it's like. It is like a family where everyone helps everyone out. So I wouldn't really be without this fellowship, and that's my life today. So yeah, that's basically how I stay sober from one day to another. It's been a bit rocky at times, but yeah, as it is at the moment, I'm now 5 years sober, and that's quite an achievement. So anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for listening to me. Cheers.
Thanks.